perseverance and just old-fashioned hard work. Just hard work. I worked harder than almost anyone else I know. However, I didn't work smarter. You've got to work smart and be visible and have a great relationship and build your brand. So you've got to focus your work alongside that, more so than just working really hard for someone else.
Lachlan Kitchen, the dynamic media specialist and a presenter whose journey reflects resilience, creativity, and passion for art of communication. With international expertise in programming, podcasting, and media management, a beacon of inspiration for aspiring talents in the industry. To his remarkable success as a senior breakfast presenter at Dubai 92, a testament to the power of determination, innovation, and relentless pursuit of one's passion. What's music for you?
Music is
Welcome back, Alphas, to a new episode of the Alpha Talks podcast. Today in the studio, I've got a very special guest for you, a very special Alpha. Please join me in welcoming the multi-talented Lachlan Kitchen to our show as we unravel the insights, challenges, and the triumphs that have defined his extraordinary career and life journey. Welcome to the Alpha Talks podcast. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for the invitation. Good to be here. And you got closer to getting my first name correct than most people.
Tell me how to say it.
Everyone tends to get it wrong. So it's whilst I'm Australian, it's traditionally a Scottish name. So we were just talking about Scotland before we started, and you have those lakes and they're Loch Lomond, Loch this.
Exactly.
So the name is Lachlan. But people see it and they say, is it Lachlan? They don't quite know how to say it. No. And so when I started working about 15 years ago, I started working in Sri Lanka doing a breakfast radio. And they took a look at my first name and it was just going to be so hard for people to say. And given my last name's Kitchen, which is slightly unusual, I just said, look, it's a bit of a nickname back home. People call me Kitch. Because it's easier to say.
Exactly.
And I've come here and it's the same. People look at it like you get at the back of a car and they want to say, Lachlan, is it? And the driver says, Lachlan. I'm like, no, it's Lachlan. But just call me Kitch. And you can see this look of relief on people's faces when they go, oh, that's so much easier. But you got close, so well done.
So I can say Lachlan.
Yeah, well
Lachlan.
done. Perfect.
Poof.
Perfect.
Wow. So once again, thank you for joining us today. And let's start with, let's say, once we broadcast the episode, people will look at the thumbnail, will look at the title, and they will think that it's really an interesting one. What can we promise them today that if they gave us their time, what they will gain?
Humor, comedy, entertainment. You can get everything. Bit of advice, mixed bag of it all. They'll get your vision, your direction, your probably your discipline as well. I'll just chip in with some laughs and...
I think we should change or switch. Cheers. Really. Pleasure having you.
Thank you, man.
So let's start. How are you today? I'd like to start with Oz. How are you today?
Yeah, good. It was a good one. I kicked off a gym challenge yesterday. So by the time you hear this, hopefully I'm a few kilos lighter because I've had a good summer. So I'm just trying to,
jump back on track.
Yeah, get back on track. And so good workout, and I'm in the middle of doing some cricket commentary for the World Cup that's on in India. Yeah. So we had a match that was on today. So you should be grateful. I only did half of the match. That's 4 hours.
Wow.
I said, I've got to get on the Alpha Talks podcast. So here I am.
Thank you once again. So tell us, who's Lachlan in a nutshell?
I've been asking myself that for a long time.
In a nutshell, before we dig into.
Look, I think I'm just I'm just the same as everyone else that's just trying to make the most of life and trying to, in a strange way, probably who am I? I'm just someone who kind of wants to make their parents proud. And I think that I'm just someone who wants to just work hard. I've been given a lot of gifts, a lot of opportunities, and I'm in the process of trying to make the most of those. At the same time, having fun and trying to help other people have a good day, because life can get pretty bad at times. And I think that what keeps us going are those absolute ultimate pinnacle, those moments that you sit around and go, yes, this is what makes life living. So I guess the eternal struggle is to get through all the stuff we go through, to keep trying to have those moments to keep you going.
A quick note, I find this incredibly intriguing. On the back end of our YouTube channel, it says around 75% of you who watch this channel frequently over the lifetime of this channel haven't yet hit the subscribe button. I just wanted to ask you for a favor. It helps this channel so much if you choose to just subscribe. It helps us invite guests that give you great value. It helps us scale the production and as well makes this show bigger and bigger for you. And if you enjoyed the previous episodes and you're currently enjoying this episode, could you please hit the subscribe button? I love your support. It's incredible to see all your comments and engagement, and we are just starting. Thank you so much, and I will repay this gesture by making sure that everything we do on this show makes it bigger, bigger, and better. I'm committed to do this promise. Do we have a deal? Thank you so much for subscribing. It means the world to me. How was your early life? Back in Australia.
Look, my early life was brilliant. So I think that you really did win the lotto of life being born in Australia like I did back in the 1980s. I was brought up in a big house, a big backyard, and property was quite cheap in Australia in the 70s and 80s. It's very, very expensive now. Sydney's second to Hong Kong, but in those days it was a great life to be able to be surrounded by two parents that loved me, and Australia had this great outdoors lifestyle that is the envy of many people. That you had a wealth of trees and parks and a lot of snakes and spiders that were always after you, but you had beaches and to be in a beautiful environment like that, very, very fortunate.
But what something in your childhood inspired you for entering the media industry? Anything or not?
Well, look, I'm very lucky. I was very close to my four grandparents. I had three grandparents that lived into their 90s and were quite lucid. So I got to know them very well. And by doing that, I got to know myself. Because I could go, I've got that trait from this and this and this. I'll pick up this habit from this one. And so aside from being close to my parents. But I think what drew me to the media was there was always, radio in Western countries has been around for years. I mean, it's radio in Australia celebrating its 100th year. So it's always been on. You wake up in the morning and people, put the toaster on, the kettle on, and the radio goes on to hear the news. So it was always around radio. It was always around music.
But no family involvement in media, like your father, your
No,
mother.
I had an uncle who was a musician, but really my involvement in media came two ways. It actually came because, you touched on me getting sick. I had quite a debilitating disease when I was about 12 or 13. And going further than that, it came from a love of music.
Okay.
So I was always obsessed with music. And I started learning the guitar at the age of 7. And even within 3 weeks, I was telling...
Spanish or electric?
Well, it was more... Well, within the first 3 weeks, it's all the same. But within 3 weeks, I was already saying to my mum, look, I don't like what the teacher's telling me. It's too single note. Dun, 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 dun. I was like, I want to rock out. So we already had to shift at that point my lessons. So music was always the love. 12 or 13, got really, really sick and was lying in bed listening to the radio the whole time. And that depth of knowledge from spending years listening to the radio and love of music, because before we had Spotify, music radio was the preeminent, the radio stars were the heroes. That's kind of where it led me to kind of think, well, I've got all this experience of music and radio. Maybe I should forge on that path. And that's where it came from.
How this, I would say, staying in bed for years, listening to radio, how did it shape you? And how did you pass this challenge, actually?
Well, how did it shape you? When you're in the middle of it, you don't know. It's only been recently I've kind of reflected on this, because for a lot of time I was never open about it. I never spoke about it.
Oh, really?
And so, because you're just trying to get through each day. It's a bit like when if anyone's been really sick with a bad flu or something, you look back and you go, well, I was really sick for those couple of days. But when you're in the middle of it, you're just trying to get through it. So how did it shape you? Look, I think it more shaped me in a sense of music. I found music as a way to deal with problems, as almost a form of meditation, of escapism is probably another relationship for it, but just feeling it and finding music and finding joy in music and finding pain in music and even when you weren't feeling well, to put on music and what the way music can heal as well is backed up by a lot of research. So it sort of shaped me in a way that I didn't realize until I sort of became well and I'm socializing a lot more at sort of 16, 17, that I realized I was a bit, then you try to fit in and you realized, no, that's a bit different because my life experience for the past 4 years has been completely different to everyone else's. And that's when you realize, that's when the actual work starts in trying to cope.
What made you move to Dubai then?
Well, it really happened in that I was working in radio, and those days in radio, I was working an hour from Sydney, an hour south in a suburb called Wollongong, great Australian word. And all I wanted to do was get into Sydney radio. But before, we had podcasts and social media and things, you had 6 music radio stations, of which there were 3 guys that picked the talent. So I had 3 guys to impress. And I was chipping away a bit, and I wasn't having any luck because of they knew people or I wasn't internal, and I was just working on it. So I looked at a few other people that were legends in the industry, and then once they lost their job through a redundancy or a restructure, they had no backup. So at about 30, I thought, you know what, I'm going to go off and I'm going to do an MBA. I'm going to do a master's because I don't want to be caught like that. Yeah. And so I did an MBA, and part of that program was to do 2 subjects here in Dubai. So 2013, I came over here and studied at the University of Wollongong here and did a couple of subjects. And that kind of gave me an insight. I didn't quite enjoy it. I mean, Dubai was quite a different place back then. I had a great time studying.
True.
And what brought me in was I was working at this same station, and I just made a great life decision. A contract was coming to an end, and they'd made me another offer, and I was like, you know what, I'm just treading water here. I've got to effectively career cliff jump. So I, sort of respectfully said, I've got to go. I got to go my own way in here. And as soon as I made that decision, I got a phone call from a friend going, I know someone who's looking for a radio presenter in Dubai. I remember you went to uni there. Do you want to apply? And I was like, yeah, I do. And so put in the application, and that's where the relationship with Dubai really began.
But you initially wanted to come back to Dubai.
There was no instinct whatsoever. I mean, I stopped over on traveling, but it was really they came knocking and said, I guess that the better story about business and networking and relationship that I can put forward was, as I said to you, I was in this position where I was trying to get to Sydney, and it's been democratized now, but like a lot of musicians or artists, your career often gets defined by 1 or 2 people that choose whether you're in the movie or in the TV show. Sure. And I was knocking and knocking and knocking, but I understood the importance of relationships. So I was constantly building a network, and I was on boards and agencies, and I was doing this, and I was always, connecting and seeing people and taking up opportunities to go back and teach and do these things. And the program director here has since admitted to me at in Dubai, he said, I went to 2 different people in Australia and said, give me 5 names of announcers that you'd think would suit. And to both of them, you were the top of the list. So it's a great lesson in, just because you're knocking on the door, resilience, and those 1 or 2 guys at that station don't want to let you in. Sometimes the industry as a whole is noticing, and that's what allowed me to, through just hard work, resilience, people like working with me, a great reputation, put me ahead of a lot of other people to get that position here in Dubai.
Let's move a little bit to the radio itself.
Yeah.
What does it take to be a good radio presenter, and how does it feel? It's something.
Do you enjoy doing this?
We talked off. I enjoy doing it, but it is the stamina to have a couple of interviews, for example, at the same day. Because when I'm talking to you, I'm giving you all my energy, trying to engage as much as possible. So after the interview, maybe I'm not, I would say, experienced enough or practiced enough having a couple of interviews per day, but it drains me. As an experienced or expert radio presenter, how do you see it?
I think it's a bit like, and we mentioned this before, for people who get up and speak, you don't realize the amount of nervous energy you burn. If you've got a big event coming up, if someone's not used to public speaking, and they've got to speak at a wedding or something, the amount of nervous energy in the week leading up is immense. And then when they've completed it, it's like they've jumped out of a plane. They go, that's
true.
over.
Done.
Done because of your nervous energy. So over time, that tends to wear off. But to be a really good radio announcer, from my time doing kind of coaching and training,
How long overall you've been in radio? That's in
20 years.
20. Wow.
What makes a great radio announcer is a listener. So people always think that being a radio announcer means you talk, but you listen to any of your favorite radio announcers, and it's like what you're doing now. You might chat to someone for 30 minutes, and if they've asked the right 3 questions, that's all they need to ask.
Correct.
But it's the idea of reading someone's body language and mirroring their energy and mirroring their thoughts and seeing when they're uncomfortable and seeing when they're, when you should maybe target another avenue, because a lot of people will just in their mind have set questions and someone might drop this, absolute bombshell of, and I had dinner with Princess Diana on the last night she was alive. And they go, so tell me about your upbringing. They not avoid, whoa. Zero in.
True. How many interviews you did last year?
So the station I'm on now, Talk 100.3, somewhere in the vicinity of 500 probably in the last 12 months.
Wow.
And it's great to be able to have people to come in and share their story. And I think what's fascinating, and I want to know if you found this, is that when you speak to a lot of successful people, you can always translate it back to a point in their career where for some point a door was opened.
True.
Metaphorically, there was an opportunity for them and they just took it.
Went in. True. 100%.
And there was no backing down. They just knew, no, this is, we're not mucking around here. We've got to go for it. Did you have one of those?
Of course, 100%. But again, it's also about you're always hitting it, you're always being prepared, you're always doing the work. And of course, opportunity will knock. And you just get into this. How do you engage with diverse audience? It's a challenge. You're in Dubai. I'm sure absolutely the listeners of the radio station are super diverse.
Yeah, when I first came to Dubai, I have to admit I did really struggle because Australian radio is very mature and the audience is very intelligent, and they've heard Australians are very popular overseas when it comes to media, because we've had both commercial radio, which is very, very creative, lots of competitions and promotions and prizes. And we've also had government radio, which has been quite independent of the government. So even in Australian government radio, you sort of have to be critical of the government.
Oh, okay.
Which is the opposite of most countries where it's in many places it's controlled. But a lot of countries, even the United Kingdom, didn't have commercial radio up until the 1990s. So Australia's had both lines. And when it comes down to that experience, I didn't realize I did have to simplify what I did, because when you're speaking to so many people of different nationalities and English might be their second or even third language, a lot of the very subtle Australian humour gets lost. So if someone asks me, if I say to someone, what are you doing this weekend? And they say, oh, I'm hanging out with my wife's parents. I might say, geez, that sounds like fun. Right, and that's a very sarcastic Australian response. But to someone whose English is third language, they might go, no, why would that? I don't understand.
Not fun at all.
So you'd have to really try and pull that back. And sometimes we have terms that are really basic, but they can be quite offensive in other countries. We all have that relationship where this word's safe in this culture, but this word's really offensive. So you've got to watch yourself.
For a new person who wants to enter this industry, what kind of advice would you give them?
There's never, I sound like a salesman, there's never, ever been a better time to get into media, not radio. I think with changing audience attitudes and changing behaviours, a traditional radio station is hard. So you look at the metrics, just in the last quarter was the first quarter in American radio history where on-demand listening overtook live listening. Now, we know this because here we are in Dubai and we don't have legacy stations that have been around for 100 years and set brands, and we haven't grown up watching this channel and that channel. So we're ahead of the game in many ways in this region. But a lot of countries, if you go to New York or London, that people have been listening to the BBC since they can remember. But it's like what I said before. Traditionally, you'd get radio, and if you wanted to be a music presenter, there was like one or two guys and one or two stations. And if you couldn't get into those places, there was nowhere to go. Now there's an opportunity where you can make a podcast, you can do a show, and it's democratized. If it's good, it will find an audience.
You know, sometimes you have kind of a good memory since you're talking to, like I said, 500 people this year. Do you remember any good or?
Well, yeah, great ones. But the worst is some of them I don't remember. So when I'm out hosting a corporate function, they'll come up to me, Kitch, how are you? And I'm like, have we met? And they're like, yeah, I was on your radio show. And I'm like, oh yeah. No idea. I don't remember them. So
not everybody leaves a mark.
Not everyone leaves a mark. No, you're right. I mean, in terms of the question was, who are some of the better ones?
No, I mean like you have a memory with one of the interviews. It's either funny or not that you remember from 500 people you met or you interviewed.
For mine, easily the best was, the stations associated with cricket was this cricketer, and he's from Antigua, Curtly Ambrose, and he's considered the best, most ferocious fast bowler, 6'6", and he'd come in and you mentioned you weren't a big cricket fan, but you're standing there and there's a fellow 6'6", and he's 22 yards away, and he bowls a ball at you that's 100 miles an hour, and you have 0.3 seconds to react. And this guy terrorized batsmen all over the world. And as a kid, Dad used to take me to games and see him. And this imposing figure came in the studio. And what was fantastic about meeting Sir Curtly was he was just as friendly as you would have hoped. It's really disappointing when you meet someone and they're not that nice and they brush you off or whatever. But yeah, Curtly was something special to be able to. It was one of those proud moments of, I've got that interview. You know what? I can send it to my friends. One chat. Isn't it funny, people's mindset? I can send one chat to my friends or family back home. And because of that, they go, well, he's successful.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't know all the other work that's gone into it.
For you, what's interesting in doing interviews with people in radio? What makes you inspired? Frankly speaking, to hit 500 interviews over a year, that's a number. It's not an easy number. Even if it's short, long, whatever, that's a number. What inspires you to push for it? I won't do 500 interviews per week.
Yeah, you can.
I can't.
But what makes you want to do 500 is, well, I think it's a case of I just enjoy chatting to people. I've been given, I was shown by my parents that are great people, please. My Dad would always say to someone, and it's a sporting term, get them on side. So that's like in a lot of sports, you want to be on the right side of the referee because offside would be a penalty. So there was the term Dad would say to me, oh yeah, get them on side. So if there was people at work, you wanted to get on their good side.
100%.
So I always had a way of being able to walk into a room and look at someone and go, especially if you're ordering a coffee, how are you? Are you good? Are you all right? And then they kind of wake up. Where's this positive energy come from? And I enjoy doing that with people that I can ask one or two questions. I might amp them up. Oh, good to see you. You're looking great or whatever. How was your day? And then I enjoy hearing the why. What makes them tick? Like what you're doing. Why are they doing this? Why have they been successful? Yet at the same time, I have a gift that a lot of guests are really nervous. And they might have an incredible story that they were working in the military in the US and now they're advising politicians and they've started up a business here, and they're sitting there and you can see the sweat coming off the forehead and they're really nervous. And I've got that ability to suddenly, make fun of myself, and
let them relax
and crack a bit of a joke and crack a joke with the people around and just kind of try and defuse that tension. And then relax everyone, and then they'll open up to you.
Let's move a little bit to music.
Yeah.
What's music for you?
Music is everything. Music is like life. It is your heart, soul. It is the beat. It is they talk about the beat of the drum. It's everything that guides you and motivates you through life.
Is there any link between music and radio, or you make this link?
Well, most people, at least when I got into radio in the 2000s, they got into radio because they loved music and they wanted to talk about it. And then you realize that music is just one of your tools. It's like someone who loves coffee. I'm going to start a coffee shop. And then you realize making coffee is like 1/10 of your job. You got to do the books and staffing and wages and everything and marketing. So it's kind of gone away. I mean, we work in an age where you've got every single song that's ever been recorded in your pocket. And music still very much has a place in music presenters, but it is going more content driven. So it's that relationship isn't there like it was, because you hear those stories, and certainly in Western countries, in the US, the radio, you would lie in bed and that was your window to the outside world of the guy on the radio, and that was the only place you'd hear that new song. So that power of radio and that magic is, I'm old enough to acknowledge it and remember it, but for the kids coming through, it's just
But you
non-existent.
play music professionally, actually. And
Yes, I do.
You did that in the Expo. Am I correct?
Yeah, talk about taking advantage of opportunities. So going back to 2000 and even 2001, Australia closed its borders for years because of COVID. They did really well at the start, and then
Extremely well, actually.
and then they probably painted themselves into a corner where it's, hang on, what point do we open our borders? Because we've got no vaccines,
locked.
and how do we do this? So Expo was here in Dubai 2021, and each pavilion wanted to have local performers, but you couldn't leave Australia.
Correct.
However, I was here. And so that provided me with an opportunity to perform at the Australian pavilion. And going back to what music did, music's not just the beat of life, but it has the ability to make people remember circumstances or situations and be nostalgic. And it's great to see here's Australians who perhaps were locked out of their own country, got to go to this bar at Expo, and here's another Australian playing these Australian songs that we all grew up with, that were on the radio, that were at every birthday party, that we sung along to when our football team won the grand final. And to have someone else sing them is a great emotional experience, to be able to give that to them as well, and feed off that energy.
It was the first performance you did in music or not?
Oh, no, I mean...
In Dubai?
In Dubai, not Expo. I'd done a few private gigs and corporate gigs and things. But yeah, sort of around that. I'd actually done one for the there was an Australian football grand final, and they wanted to have me sing some Australian songs. And it just sort of worked, build us up from there. To one of my musical highlights was at that pavilion on Friday nights, they would bring in all these musicians from around the world.
Oh, correct.
And we'd bring in someone from Latvia, and then the guys would come over from Angola, I think they were, a range of different places. And it was like, what song do you know? Oh, Fleetwood Mac, great. You, let's do this. And then you'd play. And that's that collective energy is fun.
Do you actually pursue it or not? Like now, like you're looking forward to do performances, or you're just...
Look, I have to be honest, it is probably my main love. However, going back to, what you often speak about, when it comes to business, it doesn't pay as well as other avenues.
True.
It's a lot more work. So I do a lot of corporate work, corporate speaking and hosting. And, without going into the details, you can earn more money doing that.
True.
And I don't have to lug all my gear.
True.
And I think with music is, it's a bit like any sort of fitness. I wish I had a gig that I was playing 2 nights a week, and then you're regularly informal. When someone asks you to do a gig and you're not playing, it can take you 2-3 weeks to kind of get your fitness back up.
True.
And get playing again. So, I've got a couple of gigs coming up, but it's great. It's the best. I mean, the feeling of when I'm playing, I played some gigs up at SEIF by the water. And I was doing a session, and people are walking past, and they're listening, but they're not listening.
No, okay.
They only really listen in those situations when you're not good.
True.
You
True,
look
true.
around.
Attention.
Yeah. So this one girl came up to me. She said, "I really enjoyed that. Where are you playing next?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm here tomorrow night." And you say that all the time. And then I turned up the next night, and she wandered in. She came all the way back to see you play again, and just sat there and nodded, and then walked off. And I was like, I've touched that person with my playing. And they've gone to the effort to come all the way back down and play. And to know that you've given someone that, you've got so many options of entertainment, and you've got so many devices. To be able to give that with someone and experience that is a real gift. And you can't, you appreciate those elements.
You know what I love? The thing that you pass through is being in bed for years, kind of isolated.
Yeah.
I believe it switched people to being an introvert. They don't want to socialize, but you went out of it
Yeah.
talking to 500 people per year. You want to perform some music in front of people. It was intentional, or?
Well, I think it came back to, I've done a lot of work on radio, and I also had a stint where I was a manager. And when you're a manager of radio, radio stations tend to be split between, creative content programming, and then there's the sales and marketing.
True.
So when I was in management, I'm running all the other announcers, and you're dealing with creative minds and creative types. And they tend to be quite introverted. So what made me, as you said, I'm not going to school. I'm sort of, doing the lessons at home because I'm not well. It made you, right, you're 16, 17. Oh, I've been invited to to watch the movie night with a couple of guys. I haven't seen anyone for months. I've got to be really funny. I've got to go in there and be memorable.
True.
Because I'm not at school that week to get an invitation to the party next weekend. Right. So it came a bit from there of needing, to be really honest, to kind of perform a bit, and that had its merits because it was I was performing and I was memorable. But it also had a bit of it backfired a bit that I was never making meaningful relationships with people. Because every time I'd socialize,
and then there's a gap.
I'd perform. Like we'd go for a weekend away with a dozen people, and I'm telling stories and I'm chatting away and I'm playing guitar, and then I've got a love of cooking, so I'm on the barbecue for 4 hours, and they're like, "Oh, the kitchen was amazing. Yeah, get him next time we go away." And you'd get invited, but you didn't actually have anyone that was like, "How you going?"
Yeah.
So it was a flip side there to it, but look, hey, it comes out of anything. The necessity was needed, so you find a way.
True. Since we're in the Alpha Talks podcast, let's say, not nice to say, but you were in the bottom of the pack.
Yeah. Oh, I wasn't there. There have been periods where I wasn't the alpha. That is safe to say.
And then you became an alpha in an industry that you're in. How this happened then?
Well,
how you imagine this, or how people looking at you at that period of time now see you.
I think it's more about self-perception and self-awareness and how I saw myself, probably more than I realized. In that, growing up in high school, I was fortunate to go to a quite an elite private school, and everyone predominantly when they graduated went into professional services, and it was very much about which bank did you end up working at, which accountancy consultancy firm, how quickly did you rise to a C-suite or something. And I took the path of being a radio guy, which was sort of, a little bit mocked a bit. It was a bit like the painter. Oh, he's just a painter. Because of the culture that they were used to, and I was creatively minded. And so I wasn't anything, because those guys, it was always about bragging and being this and bigging up. And I was a bit more perhaps artistic. And I generally when someone it is a bit more creative and artistic, it doesn't lend themselves to be
But did it make you feel bad or not at that time?
Look, it didn't a little bit, but it probably harked back to, without getting too deep into it, it was probably the great benefit of me being a kid that wasn't at the school because he was homesick was I was able to feel comfortable in an uncomfortable situation. Now, I was able to thrive and not need to follow the pack. I mean, that's the last thing an alpha's going to do is, everyone's going into law, I have to go into law. So I was always comfortable and, okay, well, if everyone's zigging, I'm going to zag. So I guess that the seeds were set in that position. And I was always trying to find my way. And I guess finding my way to Dubai, I got rid of this mindset of all my friends are CEOs of banks and insurance companies and I'm not at their level. That was just in my head. But it sometimes takes you to get out of the bubble to realize, I'm good at stuff. Simply, I'm good at stuff and I can really thrive here and I've got an opportunity. And coming here, people didn't see you as, Sydney's quite, as we would say, quite judgmental. I was living literally an hour from Sydney Airport South, but it was like, well, because he's not in Sydney, he can't be as good.
Okay.
Because he's down there, he mustn't be as good as everyone who's up here. And I probably let myself believe that a little bit, or more than I should. And it's not till I get out of it and I come here and I look around and I see people's responses and their feedback and I'm like, no, I've got this together. It's sometimes about your worth or your work is not valued where you are. You've sometimes got to be brave enough to put it in a different position to find
You
your true
had
work.
to leave the environment.
Yeah, and I think research shows a lot of people are really successful when they do leave their hometown. You know, maybe they're in the shadow of their parents, or they're in the shadow of a sibling.
Correct.
Yeah, and I think that coming out here gave me clean slate, and I can
Start on your own.
I can go on my own terms.
True. You know, Jim Rohn has a lovely quote says, if you want to change, just move. You're not a tree stuck into the ground.
No.
And I believe, okay, I'll put it in another way. Do you believe if you stayed back home, you will be that successful or not?
No way.
No way.
No way, because I put limitations on myself, and I had blocks on myself that I didn't even realize. And a few people would say, you know, maybe you should go, but leave on. And I never probably had a negative mindset. And I've heard you talk about mindsets a lot. It wasn't negative, but it was limited.
Limited beliefs.
And
yeah.
I don't think that we speak about that difference enough, because I would always look around and go, hey, I'm very grateful for this job. I'm very grateful for this great place I'm living in.
True.
I'm grateful. But you've still got to be able to say, you know, good is the enemy of great. I've got to break this if I'm actually going to achieve that goal.
If you go back to radio, what will be the challenges that you faced that you want to share it with the guys who would like to really pursue this kind of career?
Perseverance and just old-fashioned hard work. Just hard work. I worked harder than anyone else, almost anyone else I know. However, I didn't work smarter. So I was a bit, not simplistic, but I was a bit, I'm just going to work. I'm going to do every weekend music shift. I'm going to do the late nights. I'm going to fill in. I'm going to do the Christmas shifts. I'm going to do the long weekend. And that'll get me somewhere, and I'll be recognized by the boss. No, because...
Did you agree to an underpaid
well,
work
not underpaid, but I think that, you know, in a radio station, you're not paid on the work that you do or the quality of the work or how much work you do. You are paid on the value you bring to the radio station. So that's a hard thing to quantify. Why does this person do a tenth of the work but earns 10 times the money? Because maybe it's because advertisers know him and they recognize his brand, and his brand can help. So I think it's a bit more about anyone getting into media now. It is just, you've got to be willing. I started out as an 18-year-old, 19-year-old, working for nothing at a radio station for 2 years. And then I was willing to move to a country town in the middle of nowhere and sacrifice everything. And I constantly was sacrificing. And over a period of 15 years, I don't think I had more than 2 weekends off where I wasn't either on air or studying. And I look back and look, I don't regret it, but there were times I could have worked smarter than harder, and probably be more willing to adopt new technologies. You know, I'm in radio when Facebook kind of broke. It was around the same time. And there was a girl at the radio station, and she was saying, oh, I'm going to get my own Facebook page. And we all sort of laughed at her. What are you talking about? We're on the radio. What do you want to do with that for? Yet 6 months later, who's the one that's got the Mercedes car? Right? It's her, because they saw her. And that's a lesson in being visible. So I think that the hard work is there, but you got to work smart and be visible and have a great relationship and build your brand. So you got to focus your work alongside that, more so than just working really hard for someone else.
You were here during COVID, and that's a time or a period of time that everybody suffered, I would say. How did you navigate COVID, being away from home? Your home is absolutely locked down. You can't go back home. How did you navigate this? People were laid off.
Yeah, I look back at those times and I've really changed and grew. I had a lot of, I think looking back, I had a lot of lessons to learn in myself. And I'd been here about, COVID hit, I think I'd been here 6 or 7 months. And the company I'd worked for, about a month in, that had huge redundancies. And I was like, well, have I really got a future here? I remember saying to my boss, why am I here? Because if this has been in the planning as these things are for months, why have you brought someone new in? And
don't worry.
I got on, I'm like, but your natural instinct, isn't it? And then COVID hit, and I was concerned because of, you know, my parents and family, and Australia was one of those countries where, you know, fair way away. And when the flights closed, I was a bit, I just got worried that if something happened to my family, I can't get home. And I probably didn't quite cope with it, because I didn't have, and this is one of the things that I guess you speak about as an alpha, I hadn't really built up a strong support network. You know, I had just followed the path that I did back in Australia leading in, which was just work, and not really spend a lot of time, you know, building a relationship and socializing. And I think I struggled because of that, because I didn't have enough people to check in on you and just go, hey, as we all sort of did. Yeah. And then, you know the story that I was there and it all went bang, 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 bang between losing my job and then a week later, Australia's borders are closed and I'm sort of sitting here stuck going, I can't find a work because I kept finding jobs. Oman want me in this country, and then their borders were closed.
And you were here just 6-7 months in Dubai. So
I've been here 12 months.
12 months.
But 6 months, COVID hit 6 months and then I sort of factored along and then got made redundant sort of when we were sort of coming out of lockdown.
What is the lesson here for you?
The lesson is what I've tried to practice since I came back, and that is the importance of balanced life. You know, there have been times, and I think there were a few times when I was first here at this job where I probably lost my cool a bit because I had nothing really else in my life going on. And when something wouldn't go right at work, it was a bit more of a disaster than it should have been because that was my main focus. It wasn't like, oh, well, I'm playing tennis here and paddle here and I've got this and I've got all these other factors. And if one falls apart, that's okay. There's a safety net. So I think the balance I've tried to work in is actually not work so hard, put more work into yourself and your network and have fun, not just worry about work, because if you worry about work, you've got nothing else. I go home and worry about it. You want to, well, I can't control it. Maybe have a vent at work, but then once you leave, you don't talk about it anymore and you focus on other things.
What kind of success factors did you have that contributed to your success?
I think unfortunately what happened was when I was here in the first job, I gave it my everything and I didn't focus on other avenues. What I'm really sort of grateful now is that if any one of these opportunities fall back, so I've got the radio show, but also I'm working as a corporate speaker, I'm working as a host, I'm working as helping consult businesses on podcasts, I'm working as a musician. You've got all these other factors. And that's also really stimulating because you're always working in different environments and different people and you never really get bogged down in the politics of one too much. So you stay fresh and you stay alert. And I think that I'm enjoying a bit more of, like anyone who's sort of going off and being a bit of a freelancer, suddenly it's not just about the work, but the challenge of the hustle and then the chase. And then you seal the deal. I hadn't experienced that directly before. That's just as good as the work.
You know, you touched upon, like you said, I was working and studying. So you believe that continuous learning is important.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about it and what kind of, if you're going to advise people want to work in this industry, especially radio, what kind of studies they should or personal development in general?
When I went back and studied, it was because I was sick and I didn't finish high school. And I was kind of a bit knocked about that. So I thought, you know what? Okay, I didn't go to uni. Great, I'm going to go off and do a master's.
Okay.
Right, and there was a bit of, fueling that to drive you. When it comes down to your education, I think that radio is one of those, to do your education, there are set courses that you can do, but I think it comes down to you've just got to listen to as much radio and podcasting as you can because your knowledge is going to come about. You've listened and listened and listened and listened and you've heard things.
In, notice how to carry a conversation.
Okay, so we'll role play. If I'm like running a radio course and you come in and you say, I've got this great idea, I want to do an Alpha Talks podcast and it's great. I would say to you, okay, who do you enjoy listening to that interviews people really well? And who are your favorites to listen to?
As a podcast?
Yeah, as a TV host or anyone?
Like Steve Butler.
Okay, yeah. Anyone else comes to mind?
Bradley.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a couple, yeah.
So, but you've obviously listened to those and thought somewhere along the line, you've thought, oh, I can do that or I can do that better. No?
Yeah, actually, it's correct.
Well, I'm looking at your inspiration to do this.
True. Inspired by them, actually.
Yeah, on the weekend I hosted a conference. It was for immigration and we had 4 or 5 guys on the panel and they were really quite animated about the industry. And they loved it. And they came off air and they said to me, "But could we do this as a podcast?"
Inspired,
right. So there's got to be a moment of inspiration. And I think if people who want to go into radio, they've got to really just try and find as much time as they can. It's like if you want to be a footballer, You've probably watched every footage of Messi on.
True.
Just try and consume yourself, and also try and be around those other creative people, because I enjoy that. When you get into radio, you realize, it's not just music, it's not just this, but you've got to know about types of headphones and types of microphones and lighting and cameras and compression ratios and software and all these sort of things. So maybe it's good to find some other people to chat in that industry.
True.
I feel a bit sorry for the generation coming through. There's not a lot of work experience people, because I got in when there was like a CD library. So old I am.
And cassettes.
So you'd start, and your job would be, when the new discs come in, put them in the library in alphabetical order, but allowed you to just kind of witness and be around. And you see that like that with any industry, be around like-minded people. Look at an athlete. What's his training plan? What's his diet? Modeling on it. Yeah.
True. What's the future of radio? A lot of people think that radio will die, is dying industry. What's your opinion on that?
I think that radio, like a lot of things, is going to evolve, and I think that audio consumption will be up. So in terms of the radio station, like every industry, the radio stations that survive are able to not just be a place of music or news. They can extend their brand to the other avenues for revenue and also for brand extension. So the future of radio is strong. People still have a trust in radio, that if they hear someone say on a podcast, they may not believe it the way they've heard someone say it on the radio.
True.
Okay, because I think it comes down to pitfalls of, to get a radio station, you have to get a license off the government, and you've got to go through a lot of legal.
There is credibility
to it, trust. Okay, so radio, if it's smart, will play off that with the bigger brands. I just think there's probably going to be a lot less jobs. The pyramid's going to be smaller. The big announcers are going to be across more stations. So the future's there, definitely, but it's just going to be like, in the same way that you've got audio, you don't just go to the shops anymore. You can either go to the shops or have it delivered. Okay, so it's going to be there, not as strong as it will, but I think that audio consumption is certainly up.
You've been sitting and interviewing a lot of business people, entrepreneurs. Do you think everyone can be an entrepreneur?
I mean, the old question is, are leaders born or are leaders made?
Yeah.
Right.
What's your vision on it? Because I come from a corporate background.
Yeah.
So my school is different than some people say. I believe that, I would say, if somebody comes and tell me, should I be an entrepreneur or I go to a corporate career? I'd say, try yourself in a corporate career, a couple of years, get the systems, get the structure, see how things are going, and then decide from there you want to be an entrepreneur, build your own business, and. What do you think?
That kind of depends on the personality, because sometimes if you're an entrepreneur and your own boss, you can be lazy. There's no one.
True.
There's no one to check up on you to make sure that you're working, and sometimes it can be a bit harder if you're in a high level corporate position. For the responsibilities that you have to shareholders or to the board. So it kind of depends on the industry. I think people can be an entrepreneur. It sort of depends on, I think, how willing they are to learn from failure.
And sacrifice a lot.
And how much do they really want it? I think that everyone now is their own brand, and we're all entrepreneurs to some degree. I mean, think about last century. You finished school, you got a job in the factory.
True.
That was it for 30 years. Okay, now we're all in the gig economy. I'm learning from the interns that we get. They're 19, 20, and they've all got little side hustles of video editing here and this here. And they've all got little projects that they're working on. So I think we're all sort of developing that, going away from, I'm going away from a job where I've got a boss that's going to look after me and give me the benefits and the security. It's more going away to a society where we are all our own brand.
What's your hidden talent that nobody knows? Do you have a hidden talent or a skill?
I'm pretty open.
You threw a couple of things like barbecue, music.
It's probably cooking.
Yeah,
I think it's probably cooking. I was fortunate. I had a grandmother who was a sensational baker on mum's side, on dad's side. And then, when I was 18, I picked up a great passion for food from my grandfather, who was in the butchery, great 20th century industry. And so my first job while I was trying to get starts in radio was working with him across restaurants and kitchens, and that really harboured a love for food. And I think that now I'm fortunate that being in Dubai, I can travel a lot. And one of the great things about travel is learning about food and cooking
Culture,
and how that people's culture and how you really, you can go to the best restaurants in the world, but you would know that the best food is in the home.
Yeah, true. Home thing.
Home thing.
I'm a strong believer in the power of habits, routines, in order to reach your goal or become successful. Do you have a routine that you follow every day, habits that made you who you are now?
Well, I think that the habit I've found since I come to Dubai is getting up and trying to exercise, even if it's just an hour walk. What that does for your mind is the best habit. I think the best habit that I have got myself into is that's the physical one. I think the mental one is the habit of how you talk to yourself. You've got to find time each day to talk to yourself nicely, because I'm going to be honest, there were times you'd wake up in the morning and you'd open your eyes and you'd look around and you go, I've really failed here. How did it end up like this? I thought I was a nice guy who worked hard. And that's sometimes COVID or it's circumstance. So I think the habit is finding some time to talk to yourself nicely and recognize those times when you're not. Got to do that each day.
You're in the Alpha Talks podcast. How do you define an alpha?
Or when it comes to women or, or
Whatever.
business or...
What's an alpha personality for you?
Well, traditionally the alpha is the dominant personality. Would you say?
Yes, but like when we have, for example, the Alpha Talks, it's not about being the dominant and. There are particular characteristics that define an alpha for me. For you, what is it? It could be the dominance. It could be whatever. Try not to come out.
No, my headphones got caught.
Oh,
yeah. When it comes down to what is an alpha,
for you,
I think as an alpha is someone, going back to music, is happy to go to their own beat. They're not affected by trends, or they're not affected by image. You know, they go by the beat of their own drum, and they're happy to find their own path and really believe in themselves. I think that's where the alpha comes through. They're not, your beaters and whatever. They follow the path of the alpha. The alpha is the one who's comfortable but respectful. You want to do that? Cool. But I do it this way.
I love that you linked it to music, actually.
Yeah, well, it is about the beat of the drum. We talk about music, about the drummer in the band keeps the rhythm, and you've got to be able to kind of go to your own beat. Be happy to play to your own beat. Don't worry about what everyone else is doing.
I love that. What's your goals for the future?
Well, my goals.
You wear a lot of hats. You really wear a lot of hats.
That's and that has its own downside, because you're constantly hustling and juggling. And I also think that when you have a lot of hats, some people don't respect them over the other. Like if I was to just do music and I had an Instagram that was just clips, I'd probably get more gigs because people would go, "Oh, he's a musician." But now they go, "Well, how good is he going to be if he's doing this and this and this and this and this?" So look, my goal really is, if I could find career-wise, if I could find a way to kind of work more remotely, because radio is one of the things you can't do remotely, would be to find a way I could spend maybe 8-9 months in Dubai and 3 or 4 months back home. That would be an optimum goal if I could find that solution. I think my really goal is just to talk to myself a lot better, because a lot of times I sold myself short, and I didn't talk to myself very well at all. And it's just about enjoying yourself, having fun, and working hard.
Okay. What is the last message you want to leave the audience with today?
I wasn't expecting you to get so deep. Well, look, I think that there's just a case of be more authentic, be real, say what you really feel with respect, and be honest to yourself. I think, one of the things that I'll tell you a story that happened on the weekend.
Yeah.
So I hosted this function, and I had a great time, and I love helping people and facilitating events and getting on stage. And what really not upset me, but sometimes makes me question, why do people do this? That there was a lady there and she said to me, "Oh, can I take a photo on the stage? I want people to think I was a speaker."
It's
And this is a real
story.
Dubai story.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were like, "Oh no, I want the VIP lanyard." So she wanted the VIP lanyard, and then to have the pose on the stage, and then take the photo, and then put the photo on social. And then you know how women are like on social. All the girls are like, "Slay, fire, you go, girl, you're amazing." You know? And I'm like, that's just not authentic, right? Now, I need to shape my career a bit more, right? So I probably need to be a bit more like that at times. I just think you've just got to remember who's important to you. Love those people. Remember to be nice to yourself. Work hard and have fun. And I think if you do that, you're halfway there.
I love that. Before we end, we have a tradition in the podcast. It's the Alpha Talks memoir. So there are 3 things you need to do. Number 1 is to write down your experience in the podcast, the Alpha Talks podcast. The second thing is to write a question to the next guest or next alpha guest. It's a way of communicating the alpha guests together, whatever question you want. And the third one, who do you think should be the next alpha guest you think that will make an impact, give value to our audience? But before moving forward, you need to answer the question of the previous guest.
Please.
So are you ready?
I want to see who the guest was too.
It's hidden. I'll tell you. Okay. When was the last time you asked yourself that you love you?
Even you. I'm looking at Steve's face and he's got his eyebrow up at the moment. When was the last time I asked myself, do you love you?
Yeah.
It was probably on the weekend. Mm-hmm. Do I do it?
Do you actually but do you actually talk to yourself a lot?
Yeah, I spent a career in a box talking to myself.
Sure.
So I find myself, I have formed some bad habits as a radio announcer because 4 hours a day, I'm talking to people on the radio who have rung in.
Mm-hmm,
so I communicate with people by looking at the studio floor and focusing on, not being distracted with vision, but focusing on what they're saying. And I've found it a bad habit of trying to get out to that if I'm in conversation with someone and they're being deep, I'll want to look at the floor as if I'm on the radio so that I've got nothing distracting my vision. So and people aren't used to that. So they take it, why is he not looking me in the eye? So
focusing.
So when was the last, when was the last time I was kind to myself? Can I put it that way?
Yeah, let's put it this,
When was the last time I was kind to myself? I think it was, I work all week and then I hosted an event Saturday night. Sunday night I finished an event and I came home and it was just a case of people wanted to see me and socialize and I was like, no, I'm exhausted. I don't want to, I need this time from it. So Sunday night I took a couple of hours out, just put on some comfy pants, watched some Netflix and was just nice to myself.
I love that. Lachlan, thank you. Am I pronouncing correctly?
100%.
I love the name actually.
You got it.
Lachlan. Thank you very much for being with us today. It was really a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Great pleasure.
That wraps another inspiring episode of today's show. I hope that this episode has ignited your inner alpha and left you feeling inspired, motivated, and ready to conquer any challenge that comes your way. Remember, alphas aren't born, they're made. It isn't about dominating others. It's about embracing your authenticity, leading with integrity, and making a positive impact on the world. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe to the Alpha Talks on your favorite podcast platform. Leave us a review and share the podcast with your fellow alphas. Also connect with us on social media at SEIF Al-Hakim. Share your thoughts, insight, and stories of personal and business growth with us. Let's create a movement of alphas supporting one another. The world needs more alphas like you exactly. Until next time, stay bold, stay driven, and stay alpha.